I ran 100 fully juiced in-map Blights to test out the new Blight Scarab of Blooming, and here are the results. The Blight Scarab of Blooming were pretty expensive, 30 chaos in bulk. I think it's even up now to around 35 sometimes, but I got them for 30. The total investment cost around 30 divines. These were the scarabs I used. I used Quant on the map device to juice up the loot explosion from the blight. It doesn't affect the chest, but it does affect the loot explosion, which means more jewelry, more good oil extractor targets, and in general more loot. I used 100 toxic sewers. I went with tier 16 toxic sewers instead of tier 17. Everything's better on tier 17 right now, but I'm not going to run any tier 17 strats. Maybe I'll run a tiny bit, like 10 maps in the future, in future videos, just to compare. I've heard that there was more Blight Ravaged maps to be had in tier 17. There was higher tier, more consistent, higher tier oils to be had in tier 17, but this is a tier 16 results. I just rushed Blight. I didn't feel clear the map for increased item quantity alters, although that is what I recommend you to do if you do want to run this. I also do not recommend this Scarab investment. I'll tell you what I recommend you to run at the end of the video, and I'll include a recommended Atlas tree in the description if you just want to run Blight. I do think Blight can be pretty profitable, but not with what I did. So I'll get into that in a second. The oils made, you can see here, 20.7 divines in total. But after the oil extractor use, I got 73 of them, and I did pick up all the jewelry that had a gold or a silver oil on it. If it was an amulet, it needed more than 2 silver oils for it to be statistically worth using an oil extractor on. And if it was a ring, 1 silver oil, 1 gold oil worked. And if it was an amulet, 1 gold oil too. So after using the extractors, I made up for the extractor cost, 584 chaos, and I made on top of that another 10 divines. So in the future, if I was to run this again, I would focus on getting as big of a loot explosion as possible to get more jewelry, to get more oil extractor targets, and then buy oil extractors in bulk and just, make a lot more money than I did. Now, here's the gist of it. Is the Blight Scarab of Blooming worth it? Not for me. I ran 100 and I got on average around 1.4 back per map. The maps are selling for around 10 to 15 chaos. I did calculate them at 90% of their PoE Ninja worth because I looked on TFT and it did see like PoE Ninja was overpricing what these maps sell for. So 90% is what it was. And I lost money. I lost around 1250 chaos, 1250 chaos. I I mean obviously I wouldn't run it. I lost money. I think some people have seen the extreme high ends of what the, duplicate chests can give you combined with this, and they've seen 20 maps come from one map, which can happen sometimes. I got 15 from one map. I'll show that now, but I'll also show what the average map looked like, which is the reason we got around 1.4 maps per map. Okay, onto the currency. I got a Meta Lander. I'm not gonna lie, extremely gassed for that. Once in a lifetime drop. I was never expecting to drop this. I'm obviously not including it into calculations, but pretty cool. It came from the loot explosion, which is another reason I guess to juice up that loot explosion as much as possible, which I didn't even do. Stack deck's 153. PoE Ninja said 1.5 per stack deck, but I'm again undercutting it, especially since they were nerfed. They're not as good anymore, I don't think. 3 raw divine orbs, I think 2 came from the loot explosion, only 1 came from chests, and chaos and miscellaneous add up to about 200 chaos. 5 divines from currency. Scarabs, I didn't name every single scarab. We know the deal. 90% of PoE Ninja worth. I personally think that's undercutting it pretty badly. I don't think you need to calculate scarabs at 90%. The ones that are worth something sell easy, and the ones that aren't worth something, you vendor them and they turn into ones that are worth something. So could be a bit more than 6.2 divines, but we'll say 6.2 divines. We dropped 7 tier 7 maps and 33 favorited maps, around 4.6 divines. I didn't include any non-favorited maps. I did run Some of this with the Atlas node that only drops your favorite map, and then I unspec that Atlas node and ran some without. It didn't affect the Blight Ravaged maps. I got, you know, a similar amount. It didn't really change anything. Miscellaneous fossil essences, around 2 divines, and here is the results. I didn't include corpses slash all flames. The only thing I'm counting is everything I listed here, bar the mirror, which is obviously not included. Time to run one map because I did rush the blight, 2.5 minutes, which means it took around just over 4 hours to run all 100 maps. 9,000 chaos made, which is pretty good for the time invested, right? Only 4 hours for 9,000 chaos, 60 divines. However, because we invested so much into the Blight Scarab of Blooming, we only made 30 divines in 4 hours, which is still 7 divines an hour profit. However, if we take away the Blight Scarab of Blooming investment, and if we take away all the money we made from Blight Ravaged maps, we make 7,341 chaos, which is 39.2 divines profit. 9 more divines profit than including the Blooming Scarabs, and it's around 9.5 divines profit an hour. So, with that said, how do I recommend running this strategy? I do not recommend running a Blight Scarab of Blooming. What I do recommend running is taking that out. Take out all that investment if you're going to run tier 16. Just add, a fragment that gives item quantity and run altars. I'll put a tree in the description that I recommend running. Run altars, run 8 mod maps, get as much increased item quantity on your gear on the tree as possible, and try and juice up that loot explosion to get as much jewelry as possible, because you can see right here 10 divines basically from jewelry alone. Jewelry equals, big profits. I think this could get to double digits if I changed the way that I ran it, now knowing what I know. But that's why I made this video, to find out, right? Anyway, I'll leave everything in the description, this sheet, the tree, and hopefully this helped you learn if you want to run Blight.